Now, welcome back. We're continuing our exclusive discussion with former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. After a tug of war with the president over tariffs, Gary Cohn, the head of the White House National Economic Council, he resigned last week. And now it's being whispered that Larry Kudlow, an old friend, who was a consultant to the Trump campaign, may take the job. Well, here's Kudlow earlier this month on CNBC talking about the Trump steel and aluminum tariffs.
He's so good on tax cuts. He's so good on deregulation, infrastructure. I even like him on immigration. He's never been good on trade. If we have to walk out of NAFTA or those negotiations totally break down, then this steel thing turns in from a minor irritant to a major calamity for our economy and our stock market.
Apparently, he's had two conversations, Reince, with old Larry Kudlow, who's an old friend of yours and mine.
Yeah. No, I think,
what about that?
I think Larry's a great pick because, you know, he's used the word Trumpian. He's respected by Wall Street, isn't afraid to push back. President respects him. So those are great combinations to have in the West Wing. But the
tariffs thing, you don't think is...
I don't think... The president doesn't care. I mean, he loves Gary Cohn. Gary hates the tariffs and still loves Gary, and we all do. And he likes having people around him that don't agree with each other. He would be... The president would be very bored, regardless of what people like to write in the media about the drama and the chaos. The president would be very bored if everyone came in and said, you're right, let's just do it this way.
So that's what the media's saying is. He wants yes men around him saying, oh, you're great, you're so great, we love you, you're great. Yeah. That's like the rap on him, that he just wants constant praise and he's annoyed when people don't praise him.
He definitely wants to know when he's doing things well. But when it comes to decisions, there's nothing major that gets decided. I can attest to this. In the Oval Office that is just a no-brain thing where people come in and he just makes a decision. People come in, they stand around his desk, he allows the argument to take place, they fight it out, he goes with whatever, not always his gut instinct, he backs off of things quite a bit. But what the media focuses in on is the process of the argument as opposed to the decision. And that is really what I always try to remind people to do. Focus in on the decision. ISIS, the courts, the tax cuts, the regulations, and yes, even the tariffs. I know a lot of people don't like it, but those are core issues that he's allowed a process that includes arguing among very smart people in front of the president, and he gets it done.
Well, what about the comms director? That's an important job. You know, everyone from someone like a Pat Buchanan in his day was a fantastic comms director for Reagan. There's been a huge turnover in the comms department. Hope Hicks, very close to the president. Didn't have a huge background in communications, but trusted. I hear that there's like someone who's sort of close to her who might be thought of for that job. And then you have Mercedes Schlapp, who is fantastic in my view, who's experienced and seasoned.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's an all-encompassing job, as you know. It's not just, you know, the press secretary is a big job, but the comms director has to do everything from work with the press secretary to make sure that the rapid response is in place, the surrogates are getting out on the networks, that everyone has
events,
the same...
though, Reince. That event last week with the steelworkers was fabulous. Mercedes, I know, worked on that.
But all those events, whether it be Harley Davidson coming in, whether it be veterans,
get him out on the road, though. He's great on the road. He's great on the road.
Right. So the comms director job is extremely important, but also keep in mind it's with President Trump, who knows every article that's written. He watches all of the key moments that define the narrative. I've never seen a president or a politician more in line and in tune with what the daily narrative
is. They criticize him for that. Oh, you watch TV, you decide things on TV. That's what they always trash him.
That's what a president needs to be concerned with. But I'm just saying, in regard to communications, I don't think in modern history there's been a president that cares more about what the American people are reading and perceiving that's being done by the administration.
Did he go over?
Well, that's not to be criticized.
Did he go over the line on the Chuck Todd comment on Pennsylvania?
I don't think I would use that language, no. I mean, I actually think Chuck's a professional, and I have nothing but respect for him.
You have nothing but respect for Chuck Todd? Are you kidding me? Have you seen what he said about you? I mean, I don't know what he said about you.
I don't know what he said about me either.
I'm just guessing. He's been horrible to the president, and I don't think fair and balanced.
I would say that saying those words bring, I think, the unwanted attention and unwanted
I wouldn't use those words either.
Right. So that's my point.
Yeah.
So I think that it's something I would have avoided.
Yeah, well, it's his thing, though, right? It's his thing. Finally, on North Korea, I know you have something to say about that. It could be a big breakthrough. It's unbelievable that he's going to be meeting with Kim Jong-un.
Right.
What's your take, and how did that decision come?
I think the narrative on that got out of the gate all wrong. I mean, the idea that the president just on a whim decided to accept some invitation without even thinking about it. He had, as I understand it, when the South Koreans came into the Oval Office, the president had General Mattis in the office, he had General McMaster in the office, he had the vice president in the office, he had the deputy director of the CIA in the office, he had the DNI director Dan Coats in the office, and he had others in the office. So I think people just run with the narrative and don't realize that the president isn't just making these decisions in a vacuum. And so these are things that I think the American people need to know. And I think this is some things that a new comms director would correct immediately and get out in front of the people so that people understand that the president is surrounded by really, really smart people that talk and argue about things and decisions are made, including whether or not to meet with the North Koreans.
Mercedes Schlapp, would she be good at comms? Not that I'm pushing anyone.
She'd be great at comms.
Yeah, she'd be great at comms. She should get it. Anyway, Ryan, good to see you.
All right,
Hey, thanks for coming in. We really
right.
appreciate it.